Welcome to Club E. Hi, I'm Rick Brimacombe of Brimacombe and Associates. I am your architect of business growth and will work with you to unlock your potential and amplify the scale of your company. Today, we're talking about core customer. Do you know your who? Want to thank our sponsors, Irish Titan, an e-commerce and web development firm, Highland Bank, a locally owned community bank, Romaine Berg, a digital marketing agency, Schwegman, Lumberg, Woosner, an intellectual property law firm, and Voyager U, a catalytic gateway for building your independent work life. Please hit the subscribe and like button to our Club E channel. That will allow us to let you know when we are going live. Also, just so you know, you can catch Club E on your favorite podcast platform, Apple, Google, Spotify, Stitcher, and many others. With that, I'd like to introduce today's returning guest. Welcome, Jeff Redmon. Jeff is an attorney and business advisor and founder of Breakthrough Impact Group. Welcome, Jeff.
Thank you. Glad to be here again.
Glad to have you back. I've lost count. Is this your third, or have there been more times you've been with us here on the Digital Club E interviews?
I don't remember. It's the third or fourth time.
All right.
I'm glad to be back always, though. Thank you.
All right. And folks on YouTube can see Jeff's contact info. For those people listening out there, why don't you hit Jeff up at info@min, M-I-N-N, big, B-I-G.com, info@minbig. And that also is the website for the Breakthrough Impact Group. Again, www.min, M-I-N-N, big, B-I-G.com. And Jeff, as I mentioned, has been with us here a couple times before. He's author of the book, Cash, How 1 + 1 + 1 = 19. And anytime you are dealing with cash and you can add 1 + 1 + 1 to get 19, that's a good thing. And while that's not a topic for today, the first 10 people who will share their name, email, and contact info with us will receive a copy of Jeff's book. Again, it's Cash, How 1 + 1 + 1 = 19. All right, Jeff, tell us a little bit about yourself, your background, and the various activities you are up to.
Yeah, thanks, Rick. Glad to be back. I won't go through everything, but the most important thing right now is I'm a proud grandpa. My son is in town from Montana for a week, so I'm playing grandpa to two little boys. I have three kids, and they're all grown, married with kids, so that's cool. I'm trained as a lawyer at the University of Iowa. I came up to the Twin Cities to practice law. At some point, I worked in a big in-house position. We had 29 companies, and I kind of got the entrepreneur flavor, taste, and really realized that I resonate with entrepreneurs. I did go back and was a partner at a big fancy law firm until 2001 when I left Briggs & Morgan to start my own small fancy law firm, Redmon Law. My partner Rich Lau and I office in Hudson, serve both Minnesota and Wisconsin. Principally, our core customer is entrepreneurs, business owners who are actively engaged in their business, and my offerings have expanded to do one-on-one coaching and CEO roundtables. And this last year with Rick, we brought to the market Breakthrough Impact Group, which combines the traditional CEO business owner roundtable with coaching to really drive learnings from the CEO roundtable through your team by doing some one-page plans and engaging your team in that activity. And we've really had fun, and the companies that have signed up are seeing amazing growth. So it's very rewarding.
And then I would say for our audience, whether they are watching on YouTube or listening through the podcast, Jeff has worked with me on many different levels. First and foremost, as Jeff mentioned, trained as a lawyer. So he's worked with me personally on some of my projects. He's worked with me on some of the Brimacombe capital investments, and then he's also worked with some of the Brimacombe capital portfolio companies. And then as business advisor, Jeff has worked with me on a number of different activities, and I'm grateful for that because he can wear both the business owner, business advisor hat as well as the legal hat. And so, Jeff, you've been helpful there. And last but not least, as you mentioned, the Min Big group that we have collaborated on. And again, to learn more about Min Big, the website is minnbig.com. And so thank you for all that you do for me. And I know you're a great grandfather and enjoying that. So also fun to see you being so happy and receiving so much enjoyment from that life experience. So today we are talking about the core customer. We all have a sense of what our core customer is about, but talk a little bit about the importance of knowing more about your core customer.
Yeah, I think everybody has a sense of what who their best customer is, but we don't always focus on it. And Bob Bloom is the kind of international thought leader. He wrote the book Inside Advantage. I've had great fortune to hear Bob speak several times. I actually had dinner with him a couple of times. He is the master at helping people laser focus on who their core customer is. And we often can tick off the demographic characteristics of our core customer, but what Bob challenges us to do is look at what the psychographic, what's the pain that they feel, what drives them to make decisions. And that's where I think a lot of people just don't focus on the psychographic characteristics of that core customer and really laser focus on our activities to respond to the pain and needs of our core customer.
And how did you get kind of on that journey to begin with? What triggered your interest? What thoughts did you have? Obviously, there's always something that piques one's curiosity. You got a full plate, you got your work life, you got the grandkids, you got all these things pulling at you, but yet this concept of the core customer kind of caught your attention. What was behind that?
Well, so I don't know, about 12, 13 years ago, I really took on coaching, not necessarily to be a coach, but just to be a smarter business advisor. I looked at just learning more about business strategies and business systems. And what I found is that understanding your core customer really seems to have the biggest impact for the broadest spectrum of companies. One of the companies I worked with early on in the process, they were stuck at about $8 million a year. And through our planning process and really understanding our core customer, we laser focused on selling more to our core customers. So we didn't add one new customer in 3 years. It was all about better understanding our core customer. And that company was able to double its top line sales in 3 years. They went from 8 to 10, 13, $16 million with adding only one full-time equivalent. So it really, by hyper-focusing and understanding that core customer and what they need, we doubled top line, and I'll say bottom line moved almost exponentially. They didn't really add cost to their system, so money was just dropping to the bottom line. And it really piqued my interest on what if others better understood their core customer and really addressed their needs. And we'll talk a little bit about how else that shows up in the total operation.
Sure. So curiosity drives a lot of what you do, a lot of what I do, a lot of what the business owners that we're working with do. I also think that you probably see some of the same things happen over and over as I do, and we've talked about some of these. What do you think are some of the key elements of understanding your customer that you think many business owners, business leaders neglect?
Well, what I challenge the entrepreneur, the business owner to do is really personify their core customer, make them a human being. So when you're talking about their core customer, give them a name. One of my clients, it was Betty the Biller. She was the one that was a clerk in a medical office, processing reimbursement claims, probably sitting in a windowless office at a computer 8 hours a day. And we're challenging her to change one of her processes. And her psychographic is, don't change what I'm doing. I'm just happy, just make my life easy. And so and it's through that understanding of that core customer, how they grew, and ultimately that company sold for 550 million. But it was understanding that there were 600,000 Betty the Billers out there, and how do you reach Betty the Biller? It's not through the doctor who owns the clinic. It's probably not through the CFO of a hospital, because this is a $1,000 a month expense. So it was really understanding who was going to make the decision. And that's where I think if everybody would personify their core customer and really understand the pain they feel doing their particular job. It may not be the job of the company, but whoever you're selling to, understanding the pain of the person that's making the buying decision for your product is really, I think, the thing that would have the biggest impact for most companies.
So you mentioned Betty the Biller, and obviously this Betty the Biller was behind some substantial growth at that company. Do you have some other examples that helped either sharpen your focus on the importance of a core customer, or a company that really had a laser focus around their core customer, whether it be digging more into this Betty the Biller example, or maybe you have some other ones?
Yeah, a couple of examples. Today I have on my 3HAG shirt. 3HAG was a system called 3-Year Highly Achievable Goal, developed by Shannon Susko. And in her book, 3HAG Way, she talks about they were doing merchant processing. The end user was a merchant, a retail merchant, and they want to do credit card processing. This is in the 90s. But they realized that to achieve their 3-year highly achievable goal, they needed 30,000 merchants, and no way were they going to be able to scale. So they identified their core customer as a reseller, mostly banks that were reselling. And so they ended up with 11 resellers. So they ended up with 11 customers, and they knew the needs of those particular customers, which was different than the actual merchants. Sure, the reseller selling to a merchant, you need to be cognizant of the needs of the end user, but what were the things that really were going to differentiate them in the eyes of a reseller? So they laser focused on those needs, and over a 3-year period achieved their goals by focusing. One of the, I think, unusual characteristics that I often talk about is my own personal core customer. One of the attributes of my core customer is, I describe it as, they have a Harley in their garage. It's like, what? So you only sell to Harley owners? It's like, no. what the Harley in the garage represents for me is someone that's willing to take a little bit of risk. And I had somebody, say, well, I don't have a Harley, but I fly private airplanes. Well, okay, I'll let you fit in because you are willing to take some risks. But adventure resonates with me personally. And I think that having my particular core customer see the adventure in running a business and being willing to take a little bit of risk. So it's those sorts of things that you need to sharpen your understanding of not just who you think will be the best purchaser, but who resonates with you or your company in its core values, and so that you're going to resonate and really gel and grow with your customer. A couple of
Okay.
examples.
And then there's a process by which you bring clients through. So, how do you help clients discover their core customer? And I know it's kind of a combination of the Jeff Redmon way, as well as utilizing some of the resources that you accumulate. You didn't even talk about how many books you read and all these different methodologies you go through. But anyway, so you have a big toolbox bag of tricks that you get out to work with folks, and then you also kind of put your own spin on it. So talk a little bit about how you help clients discover their core customer.
Yeah, so I really see myself as a curator. Most business owners, they don't have the time to study a bunch of business books and how am I going to apply it to my business. So I see myself as curator, and I look for different tools that might apply in any particular circumstance, and you bring that in. I certainly have a methodology, general system that I take clients through to help them build the one-page plan. In this market, everybody seems to know traction, EOS. So I have a system. I would suggest our system is a little more robust than the EOS. The EOS is a great system. But, one of the things that we do in particular is we look at internally, we look at the core competencies of our business. We look at the outside, the exterior, what's the market, where there's open space in the market. We spend a lot of time on core customer and how in different ways to think about your core customer that you might have not thought of before to really sharpen that. And then we're looking at the attributes. Okay, we know our core customer. What are the attributes that they say they need? And then we compare how we compare to our competition. And where are there some gaps that the needs are not really being addressed by us or somebody else? And we see those as opportunities. Michael Porter defines strategy as a unique and valuable position in the marketplace, supported by differentiating activities. And through those gaps, let's find those differentiating activities that make us unique amongst our competitors, but not good enough to be unique. We want to be valuable. So what are the core attributes that our customer the pain points that they see that aren't addressed by others in the marketplace? And so that's where by understanding our core customer, we can hyper focus on those differentiating activities. We may not be there today. This is a competency that we're going to grow to achieve our 3-year highly achievable goal. Here's where we are today. Here's where we want to be in 3 years. We create what we call swim lanes to get from today to 3 years. And it may be a competency, it may be a capability, it may be talent that we don't have, but we do that by design rather than accident. And so that's the kind of general process on how we're moving from anything goes to focusing on particular things. And of course, once we know those differentiating activities, now we can develop our 90-day plan. So we're really working on those things that'll have the biggest impact, whether it's selling more to our current customers, if it's figuring out what Betty the Biller needs so we can get 600,000 customers overnight. That's we can then do with our execution plans, which there's a lot of good systems about execution plans, but what we're doing is trying to find that unique and valuable position in the marketplace for our particular core customer. You know, Ritz-Carlton does not compete with Super 8. You know, they only go for the top of the heap. And so where is your sweet spot? Where's your core customer that you need to laser focus your activities to get the most optimal price for your products?
Sure. And then what about your worksheet for the core customer?
Yeah,
How does that fit in, and what role does that play?
Yeah, let me just share a screen here. So Rick, can you see my? Yeah. So I actually belong to a couple coaching organizations, one Gravitas Impact and one the Metronome Growth Systems, which is the 3-Hag way. This particular tool's from Gravitas, and in that organization, we talk about 7 attributes of agile growth companies. And one of those is the customer. So this is a tool, one of many different ones, but a simple one that people can use, and we'll make this available to anybody that sends us an email. I can email this out to anybody that wants it. And we just, with your team, you're creating a real person that has wants, needs, and fears. And so your team, we just start with 5 real customers. These are the ones that you think are your best customers. Give them names. This is all confidential within your company. Name the customers and what are characteristics that they have. And those become the characteristics of your core customer that seem to be different from the price buyer or that difficult client that's sure they buy stuff, but man, it's a lot of work. And is it really worth having those? So what are the characteristics of your core customer? And then you reduce it to a written description where you're really personifying it. So this is, I'll say, a quick and dirty way to, if you haven't worked on your core customer at all, you can do this tool. I'm happy to make it available to anybody that wants to give it a go on their own.
Okay, so anybody that would like a copy of that, Jeff's core customer worksheet, just leave your contact info in the comments field of YouTube, and we will make sure that you get a copy. So how does that understanding of the core customer show up in kind of real live business practices?
So just look, one of the very first things that we work on is something called the key process flow map. This is a look at your internal capabilities, and we super simplify it, 30,000 feet. Here's your marketing. Marketing generates market qualified leads to sales. Sales closes the deal, sends the customer for production, pulling it from inventory, providing services, and then we bill them and collect. So that's our key process flow map. And what the core customer shows up is, okay, marketing, let's make, we can pay $100 for a copy of the yellow pages, and all of our potential customers are in there, or we can spend $1,000 for 10 names that are market qualified, ready to buy, absolutely need what we want. So in that marketing box, by knowing our core customer, we can laser focus our efforts and activities where those people hang out, where they're looking for solutions. So that's how it shows up in the beginning. Of course, then we close the sale. Now we're delivering stuff. If we're promising to solve a pain point of our core customer, by God, our production team better do that. You know, if we can't solve the pain we've been advertising, something's wrong. But that's where we've figured out our core competencies, what we do best in the world. And we're delivering that to solve the pain of that core customer. And the better you do that, the more people like your customers attract other customers, and you get that referral business. But understanding the core customer drives marketing, sales, what you do. Jim Collins, in his book, Good to Great, the one thing that he found in common with the 11 companies that moved from good to great was what he called the hedgehog concept. And there wasn't a charismatic leader, there wasn't some dynamic thing. The hedgehog concept was hyper focusing on the intersection of three things: what you're passionate about, what you could do best in the world, and where there's an economic engine. So you have a Venn diagram of three circles, and it overlaps. In the middle is where these companies focus their activities. That intersection could be your core customer. It's probably where your BHAG is. It's probably where your profit per X focus is, but they hyper focus their activity on that intersection. And understanding your core customer is key to focusing your efforts on the most impactful, most profitable business opportunities.
And again, if you want to get a copy of Jeff's core customer worksheet, leave your contact info in the comments field, and we'll get that to you. If you want to learn more about MinBig, again, it's www.minnbig.com. And then I know I asked earlier, going to ask you again, please hit the subscribe and like button if you're enjoying today's talk. And one more plug for our sponsors: Irish Titan, it's an e-commerce company; Highland Bank, a community bank; Romaine Berg, a digital marketing agency; Schweigman Lumber Woosner, intellectual property law firm; and Voyager U, an opportunity to build up your independent work life and your community around your practice. So Jeff, you've been advising business owners on many different fronts for many years, whether it's as a lawyer, business advisor, board member, investor. You've been involved in the profit as well as the nonprofit world. What do you see as the most common thread on the successful businesses or entities, organizations that you've been involved with?
Probably would say grit, that they have persevered. They had an idea, they had a product, and they most likely made a whole bunch of false steps, but they persevered. They just kept digging and digging. And when they finally found that space where they could make money, profit, things started to grow. I've worked with a company, they sell athletic products and athletic training products almost 30 years. And it's only in the last, they've been profitable all 30 years, but it's only in the last couple of years that they've started, to get in the tens of millions of dollars of sale. And we joke how long it takes to be an overnight success. And it's that perseverance and focusing, finding that thing that really resonates with your core customer, and you have opportunity to give something that your competitors don't do. And that's what I think the companies that have been most successful find that thing that they offer that their competitors either can't or choose not to provide.
All right. I agree. I'm with you. What about the opposite? What do you think happens most often when companies make a common mistake or a thread or a theme that you see over and over? I'm curious what you think about that.
Yeah, I'm curious. I'd love to hear your answer to that same question, but I think a couple of things. It's trying to be all things to all people. My clients, entrepreneurs, I think by nature, have a little hint of ADD, if not grossly ADD. So they're enamored with shiny objects, so they're easily distracted off of their main thing. Another mistake, I think people, and it sounds self-serving, but they're too cheap to surround themselves with good advisors. You know, we all learn from mistakes. It doesn't have to be your mistake. And these advisors, whether a lawyer, a business coach, an accountant, whatever those advisors might be, they bring a wealth of experience, mistakes that they've made, others have made, and trying to gut it out by yourself is, you can move ahead so much faster if you will invite other people that can help accelerate your growth and avoid mistakes. So I think shiny object syndrome and being unwilling sometimes to pay for experience that you're going to learn the hard way if you try to get it out yourself.
Yeah, so I'm going to do a yes and agree with you on the shiny object, lack of focus. I mean, the reality, these companies, many of them emerging or on the lower end of the middle market, they have a limited amount of people, they have a limited amount of budget. There's not enough time to get everything done. And so focus really important. I'm with you on that one. And then the kind of do-it-yourself nature, which to some degree serves people well for some period of time, but also totally agree about making mistakes that you don't need to make. I often talk to my portfolio companies and CEOs I work with about getting there faster, getting there with fewer mistakes, and getting there cheaper. And all those things happen if you have your eyes and ears open and can learn from experience from other people. I would add on the team front, most emerging companies don't have all the team players, which you can supplement that with your advisors. But then the other thing is there's not always a translation from big company to small company. And I've seen many times where people kind of get that wrong. They think, gee, so-and-so got trained at X, Y, and Z. And so therefore they're going to be able to have success in the emerging market field, which isn't necessarily true. Doesn't mean it's not true some of the time. I just think there's sometimes a tendency to overestimate that. And then the other thing that I see folks overestimate is the core competency of certain people on their team. Somebody says, hey, I can do A, B, C, and maybe they can do it partially, but they don't get all the way there. So I think there's a little bit of an overestimation of what team members can do. I see that pretty regularly. Certainly the core customer conversation we're having here today is important. I would add to that a lot of folks focus too much, in my opinion, on the technology or the product and not enough on the customer, which is part of why we're talking about today. But then next step would be strategy. And I think that gets a little bit shortchanged in that, hey, we have a better mousetrap, we have a better service, so the proverbial build it, they will come, and that never works. And so core customer, which we're talking about today, first, and secondly, go-to-market strategy. So those would be some of the common mistakes that I see, whether, again, it's a Brimacombe Capital universe or whether it's CEO coaching stuff I've done over the years. So,
you know, the business world is littered with better mousetraps that just didn't you know, it was better mousetrap, granted, but nobody bought it for whatever reason. And so I think that go-to-market strategy and the team, one of the questions we ask, would you enthusiastically rehire everybody on your team? And if you're honest with yourself, probably not. And we have a system for evaluating A players, and A players, not only are they super productive, but they align with your core values. And if you don't have alignment with your core values, no matter what, they're going to be a thorn in your team's side, as productive as they may be. They're just that person that always seems to take the team down. So I think that understanding your team, I was going to mention, having your wife's second cousin do your books, because that's a lot of entrepreneurs, that's what they use instead of hiring a professional that could help you from the beginning. But again, I appreciate your insights on it too.
Sure. And then for the CEOs, self-awareness. And oftentimes those folks, if they were honest with themselves, would recognize that there's a lot of things they don't know, hence the topic about bringing in other people. But then there's also kind of an assessment process that they need to go through. Talk just briefly about the Min Big work that we recently did with the personality assessments and the 6 profiles, and the 2 that you're really good at and the 2 that kind of suck life energy out of you, and then the 2 that you can do. But maybe just real briefly talk about that as an example of what we do at Min Big, but also as it ties into this conversation we're having around common mistakes.
So we've all heard right people in the right seats on the bus. Pat Lencioni, who his first book was 5 Dysfunctions of the Team. Everybody knows that, and it's about team building. He did a book a couple of years ago called The Ideal Team Player. It's about hiring the right people on the bus, how you pick the ideal team player. Hungry, humble, smart, those are the dynamics that he looks for. But then he's come out with this, it's called the 6 Working Geniuses. And this is about the right seats on the bus. So you take this 20-minute assessment, it's pretty quick. There's 6 working geniuses. This is factor analysis. There's millions of working geniuses, but he boils it down to 6. And just what this survey does, assessment, is what are the 2 that give you energy that you're really good at? What are the 2 that maybe you have to do in your job that just suck the life out of you every time you have to do them? And then there's probably 2 that you're competent, you can do them, probably do them pretty well, doesn't give you energy, doesn't suck. But the assessment and what we talked about in our roundtable is, okay, now that we know this for every team member, are they on the right seat in the bus? We're asking this person to drive performance with tenacity, which is one of the working geniuses. He not really doesn't enjoy that. Well, let's find that person that really likes cracking the whip, driving performance, and make sure that the person doing that job brings them energy to do it. And other people are innovative, and wonder is one of the working geniuses, but they're looking for that next right answer, the new innovative thing to address. So you can take every job in your organization and see which attributes of these working geniuses it would take. But that's an assessment that we've offered to our roundtable, and then they can take back to their companies as they look to make sure people are in the right seats on their bus.
Thanks for sharing that. I appreciate that. So I'm curious on this question, in the sense of done a lot of interesting things over your career, again, lawyer, business advisor, entrepreneur, board member, profit, nonprofit. Was there something that you learned along the way that you wish you would have learned sooner?
Um, Probably is enjoy the journey. When I first started practicing law, we would be busier than all get out, and then we'd have a few days where just nothing seemed to happen. And I remember the guy and say, life is fits and starts. And it took me a long time to enjoy those calms because the storm's coming back, and you really have to enjoy the journey. And so as I describe it as work hard, play hard, but I think it's more work smarter, play smarter. I'm a very active guy. I'm busy 20 hours a day. But I also don't do very many things that I don't want to do. Um, I told one of my buddies, my definition of retirement is that I don't do anything I don't want to do. And to which my wife said, well, you must be retired now because you don't do a damn thing that you don't want to do. But it took me a long time to figure that out. There's things that suck the energy out of me that I don't need to do. So why don't I pay somebody to do it or just plain not do them? So I wish I would have learned that earlier, and maybe just hard knocks. You have to go through that to figure it out. But I think I'm probably happier now than I've ever been, just because there are very few things that I do that I don't look forward to doing. And it's in the work front, it's in the play front, it's in the family front. And I wished I would have figured that out earlier.
I like it. I've wrote myself a couple of notes on that. So that's a great answer. I appreciate your willingness to share that with us here today. Last question on our topic. If there was one key takeaway that you'd like our listeners to take with them today, could be more on the personal front, it could be the professional, it could be on our topic, the core customer, but one key takeaway from our conversation today that you'd like our listeners to bring with them as they go forward on their journey.
And I'll tie it to our topic, core customer. If you would take even a lunch break with your leadership team and just have a conversation about writing down, defining your core customer. Even if you are spot on now, there's things that you can glean from understanding your core customer better. And something that people, for some reason, don't do is they don't talk to their customers. Rick and I recently worked with a company, and they thought the pain of their core customer was the supply chain. Everybody's talking about supply chain. And when they talk to their core customers, like, no, we understand supply chain is what it is. We just want people to call us back. It's responsiveness. And so I would challenge you to take time to think about your core customer, and why not pick up the phone and talk to a few of them? That, I think, would have big impact on all of our businesses.
Okay. Speaking of big, again, MinBig, MINN, big, BIG.com is Jeff's peer-to-peer group for CEOs and business leaders. And again, Club E has partnered with Jeff on that. And Jeff, if somebody wants to reach out to you, I know I mentioned it earlier, but why don't you tell everybody the email that's best to reach you?
Yeah, the best place to do any kind of inquiry regarding Breakthrough Impact Group is just info@minbig, MINNBIG.com. And that comes to me, we'll get right back to you. And whether it's the worksheet that you asked for, follow up on my cash book, anything that you think we might be able to help you with, that's the place to reach out, is info@minbig.com.
Okay, and speaking of that, why don't you give just a real brief summary and plug for the book?
Yeah, so I just happen to have one here. Through my Gravitas coaching organization, 1 + 1 + 1 = 19 is 1% increase in top line revenue, 1% decrease in cost of goods sold, 1% decrease in your overhead, and I show a P&L that shows a 19% increase in net income. And I've worked this with hundreds of companies. I've never seen less than a 10% number at the bottom line. I've seen as much as 80%. And it's amazing. With an hour, hour and a half with your team focusing on that, you can find nickels in the niches without buying cheaper toilet paper or lesser quality stuff. Just being smarter on how you spend dollars, you'll find waste that just drops precipitously to the bottom line, which gives you the fuel you need to support your business.
Yeah, and again, for folks that would like to put their name in the hat to get one of those books, put your contact info in the comments field. Last plug, please hit the subscribe and like button, whether you're listening to us on your favorite podcast platform or whether you're watching in YouTube. Jeff, thank you very much for joining us today. Thanks for sharing the stories, the info, the insights, the wisdom, and we look forward to having you back again.
Always a pleasure. Thanks, Rick.
All right. Thank you.